All right, in this video I want to talk about making money and building community. I feel like oftentimes these two things don't necessarily go hand in hand together, or at least people kind of put them on opposing ends in opposition to one another, because typically community is felt to be something that shouldn't have a price tag or like shouldn't cost money, and business is typically not felt to be something that's driven by community. And I feel like times are changing, and I think actually moving forward in the future, community led and community centered businesses are actually going to be ones that outperform other companies that maybe don't have community as a focus. And here I really think it's important to get right off the bat say, like, we're not talking about lip service here to community. Like, I think that I see that a lot with a lot of businesses who say, oh, we're a community, but then they don't actually necessarily have the rituals or the consistency of bringing people together to actually support that sort of statement. So I think when we're talking about building community with business, there is some really cool synergy here, but it's important to recognize that it also takes a lot of work to actually have community at the center of your business. And so in this video, I want to talk a little bit about that, I suppose, and just share a few thoughts. And so, yeah, the first one is that I've seen a lot of communities just in my immediate vicinity. Like, I think I'm also aware of more out there, but even just in my immediate vicinity, I've seen a few communities that have burnt out because they haven't focused on the business side of things. So, a lot of communities start with a really good intention to bring people together, and at the start it can be fairly easy to manage a small gatherings and bring a few amount of people together for, let's say, free events without charging. And so money might not necessarily be an important aspect. And you know what, for a lot of communities, they might actually stay successful just at that stage, right? You might be able to create that felt sense of community by simply offering your time as the organizer and not necessarily charging and not necessarily needing to grow too much. Like, it's not necessary to start charging for events, right? But I know at least what I found with Flying Sage and my journey was that, like, I wouldn't have been able to create the Flying Sage if I didn't ask for money. And that's because I wouldn't have been able to support myself in putting more energy into this. In my experience, the Flying Sage has grown to a large extent to where it is at the moment because of the energy and time and love that I was able to pour into it. But I was only able to pour that into it knowing that I was at least covering some of the costs that I was then spending. Because as you start to build products, in this case events, that are beautiful and compelling and transformational and all the things that you want to create in an event, it takes energy and it takes money to, for example, rent a space, right? Like, you can start running these events outside of your apartment and your living room, but eventually you might find that that's not sustainable because you might have too many people, or you just might not like the idea of having people come into your home, right? And then you can run stuff outside for free, but then you never know, the city might come asking for permits, or it might start raining. If you're in Vancouver, it's not ideal to run events outside most of the year, So yeah, there's ways to get around it, but at some point, if you're wanting to grow your community and you want to just do work that is also sustainable for you, like you want to create something that provides for you and for even people in your community, right? Like the facilitators that you're going to work with don't necessarily want to contribute their time for free, right? So if you want to build a team and you want to grow something, you need to move energy around the organization. And these days, energy mostly comes in the form of money, or I should say one of the most important and easiest levers for moving energy around is money, right? So it's important that you get over any sort of preconceived notions that, like, you can't combine these two things together. And I think that's the main thing I want to share in this video today, is just like, you got to get over that if you have any stickiness around that, because that's just going to keep you small, and it's going to eventually lead to you burning out if you're not willing to charge for what you're offering. And that's not to say that you shouldn't make things accessible and have free options. The mission of the Flying Sage, for example, is to democratize transcendence. And so if we didn't have some forms of like smaller, like events where that were accessible, then we wouldn't be living our mission. And so as much as we grow, and who knows where we'll be in 5 years, I hope that we'll have grown even more in that time. We'll have lots of new things to offer, but at the end of the day, I always want there to be sort of events that are accessible to people, no matter what their financial ability is, right? But at the same time, like if we are offering a service, let's say in the case of Flying Sage, like a 3-hour breathwork with 2 facilitators and different supports, like there's a lot of energy that's going into that, and there's a lot that is received from attending these events, and that's what makes them transformational. And so it's fair to ask for some sort of exchange there. And now when you're starting out as your community, I really suggest that you don't focus too much on pricing, in the sense that like you really should try to give away more than you're receiving. Like focus on just delivering insane value, creating offers that are very hard to refuse, and creating no-brainer situations where people are like, yes, I want that and I will buy that, because it just makes it'd be stupid for them not to. That's what I suggest for people who are just starting out. But then as you grow, you'll find that you can't do that all the time. You do need to figure out some sort of fair compensation for yourself and for the facilitators. And so yeah, just keep in mind that there is a business of belonging. And David Spinks was someone who inspired me in this capacity with his book, The Business of Belonging. And he talks a lot about this. So I'd encourage you to check out that book if you haven't already, because it's, I'd say, a really a foundational contribution to the world of community and business and the intersection there. But yeah, I think it's important to just keep in mind that you need to sustain yourself on this journey. And you need to also sustain the community, right? I actually think it's in a way selfish to not ask for money when you're building a community, because if you truly care about the mission that you say you care about, in my case, democratizing transcendence, making psychedelics more accessible, if I truly care about that, then if I wasn't to actually charge for things and I was constantly burning out myself, the community would actually fail. It would die, at the least, it would just not grow very much at all, and I wouldn't be able to make much of an impact. And so I actually wouldn't be able to achieve the highest version of that mission, right? And if my mission is to make psychedelics more accessible and to democratize transcendence, that needs to look a certain way, and that involves growing and expanding to increase the amount of people that I can help through this organization. So yeah, I think there's a subtle shift there in awareness that needs to happen. And so maybe you're already at that point where you're charging money and you're happy to do that with your business and with your community, and that's great. But maybe you're on the fence, and maybe you are one of those people that just feels like these things don't go together. And so if that is you, then this video hopefully is for you. And hopefully this video allows you to see maybe just another perspective around that.